Hi again guys, and welcome to episode 14 of Global Contenders, the review series for the touring car selection, some real, some fictional, of Gran Turismo 6. And this in particular is a fictional touring car, available in two forms, both of which are exactly the same. As with some other vehicles on Gran Turismo, such as the Renault Clio / Lutetia, there are two different versions, but the only difference is the name. Now you can buy this in two forms, as I said. One is the Atenza Touring Car, one is the Mazda 6 Touring Car. But apart from that difference, they're exactly the same car. So really, it just depends which name you want to represent. Now, that being said, what does this car have to offer? Because as far as fictional touring cars go, or PD originals, this one's been on the game for quite a while. It's been a part of the Gran Turismo franchise, I believe, since Gran Turismo 4, if I remember correctly, and I've always considered this to be a pretty good-looking touring car. It has a great paint combination, it has pretty understated, but at the same time, I would say good-looking bodywork, and the Mazda 6 is a sedan which I like anyway, especially in MPS or Mazda speed form. What about the touring car though? What does that have to offer? Is it a good touring car, or is it just one of those touring cars which is a touring car in name, but doesn't really have much scope? Well, straight off the bat, it's very affordable. This is only a 95 grand touring car. Now there are some other touring cars for that kind of money. This car's main rival would have to be the Toyota Altezza touring car, which is even cheaper at 75 grand. But for the money, what do you actually get? Because you don't see many people using the Mazda 6 / Mazda Atenza touring car, despite the fact that the livery on the car is quite eye-catching. So is it just a case of people don't think of using it, or is it more a case that there are just better options? Well, consider what you get. You get a 2.3 litre engine, just like in the MPS road version, and it puts out fully tuned some pretty decent power. 520 horsepower is not bad at all for such an affordable touring car, and it also puts out 329 foot-pounds of torque. Not particularly amazing as far as torque, but at the same time not bad for a smaller capacity engine. It's pretty light at 1,070 kilos, that's not much more than a DTM touring car. At the same time though, that is heavier than something like the Toyota Altezza, and as far as horsepower per tonne, you're looking at 486, which isn't particularly amazing, but also isn't too surprising given the power that it has to work with. As far as its fully tuned PP, it sits at 559, and to be fair, that is too high, really. You can race it at that level, but why you'd want to, or try to, is really beyond me, because it's just not really competitive at that level. It's one of those cars which can achieve that PP, but just isn't really suited to it. Just because a car can reach a certain PP level certainly doesn't mean, as many of you guys know, that you should try to race it at that level. The Red Bull Junior syndrome, as I often call it. Just because it's well over 700 pp doesn't mean you should try to take it up against other vehicles of a similar PP. You're going to be crushed by them. In a similar way, 560 pp or close enough is really high for this car. And although yes, it does have 520 horsepower, which is pretty good, and it's reasonably light, it's still no monster of a car. It's not bad, of course, but it's no DTM machine, for instance, so that PP is understandable, but not a level that I would recommend taking on many rivals with it. If you're looking for one-make racing, fully tuned, then perhaps, but apart from that ultra-niched category, just don't bother. As far as overall ability though, it's not a bad car. It's not necessarily going to blow your mind in any particular way. It's certainly not as dominating as something like a CLK touring car or a 155 or a Calibra. They really are outstandingly good in the class. This is more the kind of vehicle which is in that kind of secondary category of touring cars, and I don't mean just the real ones and the fake ones. I mean there are kind of two different classes of touring car in terms of ability. There are the ones which are outstandingly good, like the ones I mentioned, pretty much all of the DTM machines, even the 190 Evo. But then there's the other class, most of which are the fictional cars, which aren't bad, they're just much lower in ability. They're basically more run-of-the-mill, the kind of touring cars that you'd expect to see in the BTCC, for instance. Not bad, but just no way near DTM level. This is one of those vehicles. It feels like a much more grounded, much more attainable idea of a touring car, something which a smaller team would build and back into a racing series for a much lower budget. That's the kind of vibe that you get from this car, something for an ETCC, ITCC, BTCC kind of series. So overall, for 95 grand, it's definitely not a bad deal if you're looking for a good-looking, lower-level touring car to take on stuff like the Integras, the Civic touring car, the aforementioned Altezza, and various others like that. It can definitely do so, and it is, I would say, one of the better lower-level touring cars, in fact. And for 95 grand, it is pretty attainable, even for people who don't have a huge amount of money to spend. So if you fancy trying something different, or you just need a good lower level touring car, then the Atenza / Mazda 6 is a pretty decent one to go for. So that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.